Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Knee Knits. My name is Amy, and here I talk about all things knitting. And today is podcast episode number 47, where I'll be sharing everything I've been working on for the past few weeks. In today's episode, I have two very exciting finished objects to share. This will probably be the bulk of the podcast, and I have some quick updates on my other works in progress, including a new cast on. I hope everyone is having a great day. It is getting to be a busy time of year. The holiday season is fast approaching. If you're in the US, Thanksgiving is right around the corner. I'm looking forward to some time with family and just having some time off from work as well, and definitely getting into more of my knitting projects. I'm excited to decorate for Christmas. Haven't done it yet, but it's definitely something I want to do pretty soon. So excited to sit down and film. I feel like the sun is shining, the lighting is really nice. My skin looks great. My skin looks nice and glowy, and it gives me a great opportunity to talk about the partner for today's video, Foreo. Foreo Sweden is a skincare brand whose mission is to make skincare easy, enjoyable, and simple. Earlier this year in the summer, they gifted me their UFO 3, which is their ultra hydration device. This deep facial hydration device gives you the benefits of 5 spa facials. It increases skin moisture levels by 126% in just 2 minutes and is clinically proven to reduce the look of wrinkles in just 7 days. There is a lot of tech packed into this little device to give you the best facial treatment at home, including warming thermotherapy, cooling cryotherapy, LED light therapy, and T-sonic massage. To use the UFO 3, grab your favorite activated mask. Mine currently is the green tea mask, and place it on your UFO device. Use the ring to snap it in place, and then select the pre-programmed treatment from the Foreo app. The UFO device does the rest. Each treatment is 2 minutes long, and after each treatment I really see a difference in the glow of my skin, the tightness of my pores, and just overall feel very relaxed and rejuvenated. I definitely use my UFO device a lot, definitely as a form of self-care and a way to treat myself at the end of a long day, or to perk myself up in the morning and get ready for a busy day. Since I started using the UFO 3 earlier this year, I've definitely seen a difference in the hydration of my skin. It just feels glowier and bouncier. Right now, Foreo is having a big Black Friday sale. It's actually their biggest discount ever that they have offered, up to 50% off, and if you use the coupon code found in the description and my link, you can get an additional 10% off your purchase. This is a great device to invest in if you're looking to elevate your skincare routine or gift it to a loved one this season. So check out my link below, and thank you to Foreo Sweden for partnering with me on today's video. And now let's get into the podcast content. So I'm really excited to share my first finished object in today's episode, and this is my Amy sweater by Petite Knit. I've been working on this for a few months. I don't remember exactly when I cast it on. I know it's in my Ravelry projects, but I didn't look it up before I sat down. So the Amy sweater was just a basic pattern that when Petite Knit released it, I just knew I wanted one. I feel like I was also drawn to it because it's called the Amy sweater and my name is Amy. I know it doesn't mean anything, but it was just fun to make a sweater pattern that has the same name as me. This is a top-down raglan, and it's a DK weight pattern, so the suggested yarn is Sanasgarn Pure Gint, and it's all over stockinette raglan shaping, and the collar is a tall 2x2 ribbed folded collar or turtleneck, and it does feature rolled edges at all of the bind-offs, including at the neckline, at the sleeve cuffs, and at the hem. So the yarn that I used for mine was the suggested yarn. I did use Sanasgarn Pure Gint. This is in the color Cocoa Nibs, which is one of the Petite Knit colorways. It's this really beautiful deep chocolate brown color. There's no heathering. It's pretty solid in color, and I just feel like it was a great opportunity to use that type of yarn because I feel like I do knit with a lot of yarns that are kind of heathered, or maybe I'm doing a mohair in a wool that kind of adds that heathering. But this is just like a solid unicolor yarn, and I feel like it really shows off the stitch definition really well. Pure Gint is a 100% Norwegian wool. It's I think a woolen spun because it has that sort of lofty feel, and it has less yardage than a typical DK weight yarn. It's about 91 meters per 50 grams, so it is a little bit thicker if you're comparing it to like a basic DK weight yarn from maybe some other brands. I used 4.5mm needles for my body knitting to get gauge. The gauge is 20 stitches per 4 inches, and then the row gauge is 30 rows or rounds per 4 inches. And I was able to get pretty close to gauge. My final blocked gauge is about 19 stitches per 4 inches, so a little bit bigger, which made my overall size a little bit bigger than what was intended, but not a problem at all. It's a very small difference. Speaking of size, I did make size extra small for myself for petite knit with her newer patterns, the ones that are graded down to a double extra small. I usually fall into the size small for the bust circumference, and I find that usually petite knits patterns are really oversized, and lately I don't want them as oversized as she suggests. Including this pattern, I think the recommended ease is over 8 inches, and I just didn't want that much ease, so I chose the size down to an extra small, which if I knit to gauge was going to give me about 7 inches of positive ease. Now, saying that my gauge ended up a little bit bigger than the pattern gauge, I actually ended up with the 8 inches of positive ease anyway, but as I said, it has not been a problem at all. I do really love the fit of this sweater. I kind of feel like I'm jumping around a lot in my head with all the things I want to say, but let's start with the construction, and then I'll talk about the mods that I made, and then I will talk about the finished fit and how I like or don't like the garment, but spoiler alert, I really like it. So the construction of this is top down. It is a raglan, and you start by casting on and knitting flat. So to shape the back neck and to raise it, you just knit back and forth and then increase at certain points. So there's no short rows in this. So you can see the increase lines that are formed at the front of the neckline from raising the back neck, and then you just go into your raglan shaping. I think this is a 2-stitch raglan, and then it just goes all the way down. For my size, extra small, there's no compound raglan shaping at all. It's just every other for the entire increase section. I do know for the larger sizes, I think you finish the sleeve increases at some point, and then you continue to increase on the body only at the end of the raglan. But for my size, it's just a straight all the way through, and then you split for sleeves. You then knit the body in stockinette stitch. You finish with a pretty long stretch of 2x2 ribbing, and then you do the rolled edge at the end. The sleeves, stockinette stitch, they are very wide. Mine could be knit on 16-inch circulars the entire time. You can see there's not too much decreasing. This is the underarm to the cuff. It's a very slow decrease. You have a lot of stitches at the end of the sleeve that have the same finishing as the body. And then the last part of the sweater is the collar. You pick up the collar and knit it with a 16-inch circular. You do a purl ridge, which I think is a nice, very subtle design effect on this sweater. And then you do 2x2 ribbing for, I think, about 9 inches. I actually shortened my collar by a lot. I shortened mine to about 6.5 inches, so I left out 2.5 inches of knitting. Similar rolled finishing, and then there's your finished sweater. So nothing too crazy. If you've done a raglan before, it's a great basic piece. It was something that I really enjoyed knitting because it was kind of mindless, and I feel like the extra details were fun, like the rolled edges and the 2x2 rib. For modifications for my Amy sweater, I just did classic modifications that I normally do personally for myself. I am petite, I'm only 5 feet 0 inches tall, so I often shorten body lengths and sleeve lengths to fit my proportions better. And I also chose to shorten the neck just because I think I have a short neck compared to average or standard measurements. I don't know. I also didn't really want the turtleneck to come right up to my chin, so shortening the collar by about 2.5 inches definitely gives me a collar that does not come up to my chin. It's a pretty short turtleneck, which I am happy with. So my body length I shortened overall by 3 whole inches. So I knit the stockinette portion to 3 inches shorter than what was suggested in the pattern, and then I did the ribbing to almost the suggested length. I think I left out maybe 1/4 inch and then bound off. For my sleeves, they are 2.25 inches shorter total than the suggested sleeve length, and these are pretty long sleeves on me. They definitely go well past my wrist for that slouchy look, and I think my ribbing on the sleeve is also shorter than the pattern suggestion, just because as I was knitting it, I knew I was already close to my maximum desired sleeve length, so I didn't really have the opportunity to knit the ribbing to that much longer. In fact, my sleeve decreases end 1 round or 2 rounds before the ribbing starts, so I really didn't have any opportunity to lengthen the ribbing without making the sleeve much longer than my hand. So this overall gives me an oversized sweater. It's baggy. I did share previously that I was a little bit concerned that the sleeves were so wide, but now that I've worn the sweater, I actually really like the wide sleeves. I feel like it just feels extra cozy. They are long, but they're not too long where they get in the way of things. I certainly can't really push them up too much, but I can definitely roll them up if I need them out of the way to do dishes or wash my hands or something. And I like how the cropped body that I made still looks really nice with high-waisted pants. It doesn't swallow me as an oversized garment. I feel like I made it well proportioned, which I'm happy with. I also really like how this turtleneck is not super tight. Like these are a lot of stitches. This is a wide neckline, so this is certainly not a turtleneck that touches all portions of your neck. It doesn't suffocate. It just kind of is there. You obviously can feel it, but it's not tight on your neck. So I kind of like that. I feel like it's a good size for the sweater. I feel like the overall sweater, I'm just really happy with the finished look of it and really happy with the finished feel of it. Given all of those modifications, I used less than 11 skeins of the Peer Gynt to make this, the extra small for myself. The pattern calls for 12 total skeins, so I would imagine that that's a pretty accurate yarn estimate for my size. If I were to knit the sleeve and body lengths and the collar length to the suggested lengths, 12 or 600 grams of the yarn would have been enough. So yeah, I have like 1.5 or less than 1.5 balls of the Peer Gynt left over that someday I will find something to do with this. This is it on, so I know you can't really see my full body, but you can see the largeness of the sleeves. That definitely feels cozy. You can see the largeness of the neckline, how it's not close to my neck at all. It just kind of sits there. And I feel like overall I kind of made like a mock neck length. I don't know. It's certainly not super tall, and if anything, I feel like I could have made it a little bit taller, but I'm happy with what it is right now. Now, Peer Gynt is a yarn that has people divided. Not everyone loves it. Some people love it. I think for me, after making this sweater, I really love it. I feel like I'm leaning more into kind of rustic yarns, although I know I'm never going to be a full convert to fully rustic yarns. I've knit with Lopi. It was fine. I don't really want to do that again, but I feel like Peer Gynt is kind of like that, dipping your toe into something that's not like it's not a silky superwash at all, and it's not a buttery merino. This is just like a nice hardy wool, and it definitely has a little bit of toothiness. It has a little bit of prickliness. I'm wearing it right now without an undershirt, and I can feel it, but for me personally, it doesn't bother me. I don't really feel itchy. Of course, every person is different, so if you are sensitive to things that are a little bit toothier or woollier, Peer Gynt probably isn't the best bet for you. I feel like a lot of people ask me if I would recommend it for the itchiness, and it's such a hard thing to recommend because everyone's personal preference and tolerance for itchy fabrics is so different. Like, just because I love it doesn't mean everyone else is gonna love it. So if you want to try it, I mean, I would recommend just getting maybe one ball of it. Luckily, they're not super expensive. Peer Gynt is one of Santa's Garn's cheaper yarns, and since it's in a 50-gram ball, you could just purchase one. Try it out, knit a gauge swatch or a square, like hold it on your neck or something or somewhere sensitive and see how you react to it. I do think it's a hard thing to recommend without having you actually touch it yourself. So this is a yarn that does feel rougher in the ball than it does once you block it. I always block all my knits, you know, I soak them in wool wash and then let them air dry, and blocking definitely transforms this fabric a bit. It doesn't turn it into something different, but it softens a little bit more than what you feel at the yarn store when it's not washed. So I'm looking forward to using Peer Gynt again in the future. I really love how it knit. It just felt really nice to knit with. Like, I was always excited to pick it up and work on it. I really love the stitch definition, and I love the fabric that it made at this 20 stitch gauge. You know, it's flexible and it's not the drapiest fabric, but it definitely has some flow, and it's just like a good wool that I'm looking forward to using in the future for other DK weight projects. And there's so many colors to pick from. There's some heathered colors, so really happy with my choice to use this yarn and really excited at the prospect of using it again in the future. If Santa's Garn ever offered me a sponsorship, I would be over the moon. But until then, I'll have to buy it myself. So that's everything I think I can share about my Amy sweater. I will continue to wear it for the rest of the podcast, and then let's move on to my next big finished object. Here she is. Oh, I'm so happy to finally be sharing this as finished. This is my Aurelia Pullover, and it's a project that I started last December. The Aurelia Pullover is a all-over textured, cabled, bobble-filled pattern by Sari Nordland. It's a top-down raglan, and it's knit in DK weight yarn, and the yarn that I used was Sorella Yarn's Classic DK in the color Folklore, which is this beautiful purpley gray color. Definitely has a purple tone, but it's super washed out and more of a neutral leaning purple. And the Classic DK is a 100% superwash merino yarn, 231 yards per 100 gram skein, and I used just under 5 skeins of the yarn for my sweater. So if you've been with me for a while, you know that this has been an ongoing project. I started it last winter. I feel like I worked on it kind of steadily throughout the winter, and then I put it away. It was on hiatus for the spring, the summer, and even early fall, and then I decided to pick it back up again and get it finally finished. This is a slow going project. There is a lot going on. It's certainly not for the faint of heart, and certainly a project that needs your full attention to follow the cable charts and all of the different stitch patternings that go on. I'll just share some details that you can find in this sweater. You do have the main cable portion that goes down the front center. There are also these beautiful cables that go down the sides that feature these bobbles. I really like how these cables, they have some cables that are 2 stitches thick and then some cables that are just 1 stitch thick, like over here. It's like a really cool design feature. I also really like how it plays with the raglan, like the increases here. I love that part of the design. It looks so good because it kind of just flows with the raglan. And then the raglan itself has some patterning here that also flows into the sleeves. You can see these 1/1 cables, and then the sleeve has its own kind of smaller version of the main cable pattern. All of the cables have moss stitch on the inside. The rest of the sweater has double moss stitch, features twisted rib details. What else? The back is the same as the front, so there's a lot going on here. I really enjoyed knitting this. I feel like I might have complained a bit that it took me a while, but it's not that I didn't enjoy working on it. It's just I'm not used to having projects last this long. So it's a real triumph for me to have this finished, and I'm so excited to wear it. So for my Aurelia, I made size 2, which was the recommended size for my bust circumference. The recommended amount of positive ease in this pattern is 1 to 4 inches. I ended up knitting the body with 4.5mm needles to reach gauge. I did a full gauge swatch with the cable pattern, and because this is superwash yarn, I definitely made sure to do a gauge swatch that was blocked because there was definitely going to be a lot of growth with blocking in this sweater. The sweater is knit from the top down, and you start incorporating all of the charts right away. And in fact, the yoke with the sleeves and the body all together is probably the most difficult part of the pattern because you are following 2 different charts, one for the body, one for the sleeves, and you're increasing all at the same time, and it's definitely a lot to keep track of, so definitely something that you need to pay attention to and be ready for. But once you split for sleeves, the body and the sleeve knitting is pretty straightforward. There are decreases incorporated into the sleeves, and then the body is just knit straight through following one chart. There are cables in every single right side row of this pattern. Some rows are definitely busier than others. Most of the cables are just 2/2 cables or 1/1, so you're never doing like a 3/3 or a 4/4. They're pretty small. So I was able to do most of the second half of this sweater without a cable needle. When I started this, I was pretty dependent on knitting with a cable needle, but then I learned how to do cables without a cable needle at a Sari Nordland class, and I really like the technique she shared. People have asked, and I haven't made like a tutorial video for it, but basically she slips all of her stitches to the working needle before cabling them, and then you use your needle to pick up the stitches either from the back or from the front, and then put them back on your non-working needle to then knit them in the cabled order. It's hard to explain. I'm a left-handed knitter, so if I say left and right-handed needle, it's not going to be correct for if you're a right-handed knitter. So part of that is one of the reasons why I'm hesitant to like make a tutorial video, because it would really only be applicable to left-handed knitters. But basically, slip purlwise all your cabled stitches onto your other needle and then move them onto your first needle in the cabled order. That's how she does it. That's how I do it. And that's the technique that I like the best, because I've tried other techniques, like not slipping them first, and that just hasn't worked for me. But yeah, I was able to do like the second half of this without a cable needle pretty easily, and it definitely was a technique I enjoyed knitting with. For the bobbles, I followed the bobble instructions in the pattern, and I really like how they turned out. I can't say I'm too experienced with knitting bobbles, and I know some people are very particular with how they make their bobbles and how they sit on the fabric, but whatever was written in the pattern instructions turned out like this, and I really like it, and yeah, I would do it again. All of the ribbed accents on the sweater are half twisted ribs, so you just have to twist the knit stitches. The collar is picked up and then knit and then folded. When I do a folded collar, I like to secure it with the bind off. However, in the pattern, Sorry Northland says you can either do that or just sew it on with a long tail of yarn. So the collar I really like. I'll probably pop some elastic in here at some point. It does have a purl bump when you pick up the collar, which I kind of like that detail. I think the twisted rib is a really good companion to all of the texture in this sweater. I did alternate skeins throughout the entire project since this is a hand-dyed yarn project. I did not want to have any big lines of color changes if there were color disparities in my yarn skeins. I just always do that if it's hand-dyed. I don't even like check. I know some people will look in like the daylight and see, well, can I see any differences? I just go for it. I'd rather not take the risk because sometimes you can't realize it till after you've knit the whole project. And alternating skeins was definitely a thing that hindered me in this project. It took a while. It added some extra complexity on top of an already complex project because this doesn't have any portions of stockinette at all. I ended up needing to use the yarn forward technique to alternate skeins, which I will link below. It's not a difficult concept to do, but you know, it just adds some complexity. You have to keep your yarn ball straight, and it does kind of pull like that stitch that you are alternating at. I don't even remember where it was. It might have been like along the raglan. Luckily, because there is so much texture, it's hard to see where the stitch was pulled. I do know if you do yarn forward technique with a plain stockinette stitch, it's a little bit more visible, but with here, I didn't have any issues with visibility of alternating skeins. I'm really pleased with how this turned out with alternating skeins. When I look at this from afar, I cannot see any issues at all with like color pooling or lines from switching skeins. So I think it was well worth the effort. However, I am going to go forward probably not using a hand-dyed yarn again for something with this much texture. I think I just didn't really enjoy the complexity and would rather stick with a commercially dyed yarn that has dye lots and I can just knit away without worrying about which ball of yarn I'm using at any given time. Although I do really love how this looks with the superwash kind of dyed look. It definitely adds some more depth to the fabric than a non-hand-dyed yarn would have, but I'm really happy with it. Of course, I keep smiling about it. I'm just really glad to have this finished and so excited to wear it. It is really soft. I do really love the feeling of the superwash merino. It was super squishy to knit with, and it's super squishy like the fabric itself. So it's definitely going to be a comfortable sweater, not itchy at all. Just a really nice thing to wear. Now this is 100% superwash yarn, so I knew blocking might have been an issue. I have heard kind of, not horror stories, but maybe questionable things happen to people after they block their superwash sweaters. Like their sweaters grow to be like twice the size that they used to be. So going into this, I did block my gauge swatch and I recorded how much it grew. So I was aware that knitting this before blocking, it was supposed to be like a tight sweater, and it was. I'll put a picture up of me wearing this sweater finished before blocking. You can see that it's very tight, it's very short, like both the sleeves and the body. And I was happy with that because I knew this was going to grow a lot with blocking, was trusting my gauge swatch here. So it kind of had negative ease on me here, even though it's supposed to have like 4 inches of positive ease when done. So blocking, I just did my normal blocking method, and then I put it through the dryer on the spin cycle only to wring out all the water. And when I blocked it, I did pin it to the body width that I was looking for, which ended up being about 2 inches of positive ease in circumference rather than the full 4. I couldn't really stretch it to full 4 inches of positive ease without it getting like too stretched and weird and like the puckering that you get sometimes when you pin out your knits. So I just kind of let it stretch out to where it needed to be and then pinned it in place. the cables really opened up, the fabric really opened up, and now post blocking, you can see that the body had lengthened a bit, the sleeves had lengthened, and the overall fit is a little bit more relaxed, and this is definitely the fit that I was going for. So I had no problems with the blocking experience. So to give you some perspective on how much growth I experienced with blocking this 100% superwash garment, my sleeve length grew by about 1.5 inches, my body length grew by about 1 inch, and then my body width grew by about 4 inches. So definitely a lot of growth, but I think it's a combination of like, this was a superwash yarn which grows, but this also was cabled, and if you've knit cables before, they are always very tight before blocking, and even in a non-superwash yarn, you will experience a lot of growth with blocking cables, which I experienced with my Moby sweater, which was a non-superwash merino and mohair. That also grew a lot to be a more relaxed fit post-blocking. So long story short, if you're doing a cabled knit, if you're doing a knit with superwash yarn, definitely do a gauge swatch, block your gauge swatch to anticipate how much growth you'll get. Of course, a gauge swatch is never really gonna fully represent an entire sweater. I think that the weight of the sweater might lengthen this a bit more over time, that might even lengthen the sleeves a bit over time. So I'll keep you guys posted as I wear this throughout the season if I'm experiencing anything like bad or questionable, but right now, post-blocking, I really like the fit of it. So Aurelia sweater is off the needles. What a project. So happy to have this done. I'm already thinking about my next textured knit. In fact, I have the Vivian pullover by Sari Nordland cast on, and I'm excited to get working on that in a non-superwash yarn, so no alternating skeins, and can't wait to get that going on my needles. Even though they're slow projects, they are well worth all of the effort. Moving on to my works in progress. My next work in progress is the Sundown Shawl, which I shared was a new cast on in the previous podcast. The Sundown Shawl is a large rectangular blanket scarf pattern. It's just a rectangle, so you could call it a scarf, call it a shawl. It does come in 2 sizes, and I'm making the size large. So this here is the width of the size large, definitely more of a shawl width. If you do the size small, it's about half the width. So that would give you probably more of what's considered a scarf. The pattern is written by Kristen Strecker Kellogg, but was released in partnership with Originally Lovely yarn as part of the Adventures of Life make-along. The make-along is ongoing now through the end of, maybe not the end of December, to some point in December, and there's a collection of patterns, so if you want to join, obviously you can join at any time. And the yarn that I'm using for the Sundown Shawl is Originally Lovely Fluff. Fluff is an Aran weight chainette style blown yarn that features a blend of 70% baby alpaca, 7% merino wool, and 23% polyamide. This is the color Wolf, which is this heathered brown. It's kind of like a medium brown. You can see it compared to this deep chocolate brown. It's a lot lighter in color. So I chose to knit this because I really want to channel my inner Lenny Kravitz and the Lenny Kravitz scarf. So I think this is going to be literally a perfect match, especially with the color. And I did not pick the color with the intention to match that meme, but I think it's a pretty close match. So I'm excited to get this finished, but I'm also really happy to be working on it, so I'm not really trying to rush through it. I kind of anticipated this being like a slog of a project because it is just a rectangle, and I feel like rectangles have the potential to be boring, but this has a lot going on that has really kept me engaged, like a lot more than I expected. You can see there are columns of seed stitch, and then there's some ribbing, and then there is this mock cable here that is not a real cable, so you don't actually use like a cable needle, you just do a traveling stitch that goes diagonally like that and kind of mimics a cable. It's definitely a little bit faster than a real cable, a little bit simpler, and then the motif kind of repeats a few times. This is the right side, but I feel like it looks just as good on the wrong side thanks to the ribbing and the seed stitch, which is pretty reversible. I'm really excited at the idea of using this blanket scarf just as like a cozy wrap when I'm at work at my desk and I just want that extra layer to feel cozy, or when I'm at home and the house is cold. This is just going to give a lot of warmth and coziness. It's a super soft fabric. I'm knitting this with size 6.5 millimeter needles, or US 10.5, so pretty thick, and it's making it move pretty quickly, which is nice. And it's a fabric that feels not, I don't want to say dense in like a bad way, but it certainly doesn't have a lot of space between the stitches because the fluffy yarn just fills in all that space, and it just feels really cozy and really soft. I love baby alpaca. It feels really nice on my skin. I have no like issues with it being itchy, and it really just feels like a cloud. I feel like I need to back up a bit to show the whole thing, just to show some progress. You can see where I have my yarn ends from joining a ball. So this is where I joined the first ball of yarn, and I have 8 balls total, so it's going to be the length of whatever this is times 8. I haven't actually measured it like I said I would last podcast, but I finished the first ball and then I filmed the last podcast maybe 2 rows after the first ball, and then I connected the third ball as well. So I'm maybe like 2.5 balls, 2.25 balls in. So definitely making steady progress here, and I think I'm on track to finish this by the end of December if I keep working on it throughout the week and doing 1 ball a week. And it has been going by faster than I expected, so good progress here on my Sundown Shawl. All right, I have one more project to share with you. I'm gonna make it really fast because the sun is setting, the light's getting poor, and my camera's dying. So quick project update. I cast on the Karl Johan sweater from the Knitting for Olive book, so it's by Pernille Larson, and you might recognize the yarn that I'm using. So I had cast on the Paloma by Espace Tricot earlier this year, and then I realized I made a mistake with it, and then I had to frog it all, and then I just lost interest in the pattern. Nothing wrong with the pattern, it's just a raglan with some twisted stitch details, and I just wasn't feeling it anymore. But I was feeling the Karl Johan sweater, which features a really beautiful shaped contiguous shoulder. It's a turtleneck and knit and DK weight yarn, so the classic Knitting for Olive combo of merino and soft silk mohair held together on 4mm needles. So the yarn that I'm using for this project is not exactly that. I'm using, let's see if I can pull it out. This is Sorella Yarns Cashmere Sock in the color Evie. This was gifted to me, and this is a blend of 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, and 10% nylon. This is a 4-ply fingering weight, and there are 435 yards per 100 grams. And then I'm holding it with Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in the color Petroleum Green, and this is the lace weight combo of mohair and silk. So I just cast on. You start with the turtleneck here in 1x1 ribbing, and I think I'm going to do the turtleneck to the full length. I kind of want a turtleneck, even though I just talked about how I like how this isn't fully up to my chin. I kind of want this to be a little bit taller. So you start with the turtleneck and then you go into the shoulder shaping, and yeah, I think it'll be a good project, a good kind of like stockinette project to have in rotation with some of the other textured knits that I'm working on. Yeah, my camera is about to die, so I must end the video here. Sorry for the abrupt cutoff. This is my next project. So I hope you guys are having a great day. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye.